So I noticed that Seth Rogen has explained his TMNT movie is has a totally tubular connection to Tony Hawk. As I know, the Heroes of the Half Show will have a connection to the skateboarding legend, Radical. As I know, the Heroes of the Half Show are on the release form this year, including an upcoming Seth Rogen produced animated Nicktoon reboot. As I know, the funny man is getting ready for everyone's favourite pizza loving reptiles to team up with legendary skateboarder Tony Hawk. But I understood that if they do skate, I'd probably love the idea if they would have the kind of him playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, like a random assortment of music. It all fits together, and I'm kind of psyched about it. Well, it's really cool and amazing at the same time. And as I know, it's quite interesting. It might disappoint some fans, but I have something else that also disappoints most of the fans that are of Fast and Furious. I heard some rumor that Fast X is coming out this year, but I understood that this is going to have something you imagined. As I know that they notice it's been like 10 years since probably Fast and Furious 6 happened, even though Fast 5 came out a decade ago. But I noticed what happened to Paul Walker and they brought Jason Momoa out for revenge. I understood that it's going to be a game changer. For me, I'm going to review this 2001 film called The Fast and the Furious. As I noticed, this is very interesting for the well-being. As I know that this is not one of those stories you can begin with. As I know, it was a reboot to a 1950s movie that dealt with the story of how this movie came to be. But I understood that since the dawn of time, I probably understood what can I do to review The Fast and the Furious. As I know that this is going to be a bumpy ride, so watch me review this. Well, I'm getting you ready to review The Fast and the Furious 2001, which is a reboot that takes place in an alternate continuity that is completely separate to the 1954 film of that same name, which was originally a crime drama B movie that was directed by Edward Sampson and John Ireland. This one was an action film directed by Rob Cohen, which came from a screenplay from Gary Scott Thompson, Eric Bergquist, and David Ayer, who was best known for directing Suicide Squad. Even though it's based on a true story, this film had an interesting backstory from 25 years ago. In 1998, Rob Cohen was reading a Vibe magazine called Racer X, which was about street racing in New York City, and was watching an actual illegal street race at night in Los Angeles, which was originally developed under its original title, Redline. During development of the film, Roger Corman licensed the rights of his 1954 film of the same name to Universal, which was originally going to be for most film companies, such as Disney, Warner Bros., Paramount, Columbia, and MGM. But none of them were quite interesting to do this, so Universal was the right choice to do so, which would be just a suburbanly diverse story that would not take place in New York, but instead it would be a diverse one set in Los Angeles. In case they want to facelift the concept of this movie, Neil H. Moritz, who worked on with Paul Walker on the film The Skulls, have been given the idea of the opportunity of what Brian O'Connor should be portrayed. I noticed that Eminem was offered the role to portray Brian O'Connor, but turned it down due to his commitment to his very own movie 8 Mile. And I don't know, Mark Wahlberg, who was considered for the role of Sully from Monsters Inc., had attempted to portray Brian O'Connor, but eventually he decided to join Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes. And Christian Bale was originally going to be involved in this movie as well. But I understood that just because he wanted to play Brian O'Connor, I think he was a bit too busy being involved in his commitment to Batman Begins from 4 years later. Originally, if they would greenlight the film, if Timothy Olyphant was going to play the role of Dominic Toretto, but however, Olyphant, was already in a car-themed blockbuster movie called Gone in 60 Seconds, which came out a year earlier. That for some reason, I felt a bit too weird, as I noticed that Eliza Dushku, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Jessica Biel, Kirsten Dunst, and Natalie Portman have all auditioned for Mia Toretto. Ultimately, they chose Michelle Rodriguez to set things right, even though Jordana Brewster was also involved, along with the help of Vin Diesel, who was involved in The Iron Giant, was involved in this movie as well. It was filmed throughout various locations within Los Angeles and parts of Southern California from June 26 to October 25, 2000. Even though it included the Dodger Stadium, which was used for an opening scene where Brian tests his Eclipse in the parking lot, where a similar act would happen in The Bad Guys, where Mr. Wolf would test his Corvette on the outside of the parking lot, where the Dodger Stadium lived here. Even though it was also filmed in Angelino Heights, Silver Lake, and Echo Park, which was the neighborhoods around Toretto's home, as well as Little Saigon, and the San Bernardino International Airport, which was the venue for race wars that attracted more than 15 import car owners who were enthusiastic to each other. And the last rig heist scene was filmed along Domenigoni Parkway in the southern side of San Jacinto Hemet in the San Jacinto Valley near Diamond Valley Lake. Even though, despite the filming being done, it was originally going to be released in the month of March 2001, around that time I understood that this movie had an interesting release date. Well, the release date of this movie was said to have been very interesting. As I know, from March 2001, there were a lot of movies that came out earlier from a go. As I noticed, one of those movies, I understood that this movie was going to come out on a release date set for the day that would come out was going to be March 2nd, 2001. However, in order to avoid competition with C Spot's run, it was bumped all the way up to June 18th, 2001. Even though it was theatrically released in the United States by Friday, June 22nd, with the help of Universal Pictures, as well as the help of Columbia Pictures in the UK, if you had the DVD. Despite receiving mixed reviews from critics, with criticism for its screenplay and characterization, they praised the action sequences for Walker and Diesel's performances and considered their breakthrough roles for the first time ever. Even though the story, which was mostly about a recent spate of truck hijackings, causing O'Connor to go undercover and prevent Toretto, who was a local street racer, to investigate the matter of that problem. Even though it grossed up to $207.3 million at a budget of $38 million, it became one of the highest grossing films of 2001 to debut in the spring and summer of that year, along with Shrek. Even though, despite its near delaying of what it was short-lived, let me just think about the pros. I appreciate the pros of this movie. And they had these two kick-ass soundtracks. They had lots of heavy metal and rock and roll and hip hop and rap thrown into it. As I know it's so awesome and I liked the album that also had R&B in it with as well. It was made by the label of Universal Records along with Murder Inc. and Def Jam, as well as the genre of the soundtrack version. This one had alternative metal, new metal, post-grunge, electronica, and was labeled by Island. Even though 90.9% of what I can imagine the writing was quite amazing. As I appreciate the creativity and interesting story of the whole movie, I've learned there were some bad qualities. As I know there are some bad qualities of what I could understand about what the whole movie had some problems, there are some problems about why its bad qualities can pretty much tickle me the most. As I noticed that there are some bad qualities out there, I understood that there are a few bad qualities I can think of. Originally, Rob Cohn only made a cameo appearance as a pizza delivery man, as well as some other thing dealing with alternate versions. If you type in alternate versions, you notice that there's something funny about the alternate versions of what you saw in this movie. Crazy Town's Butterfly originally showed up in the theatrical release, but however, it was changed for the film's DVD release. Even though Paul Walker was pulling up to a coffee shop, even though when it was shown on DVD, Peter Honus had to editly trim down the scene where John hijacks a truck onwards at the end of the film to secure a PG-13 rating, which was made to avoid an R rating for the trims within the shots of Vince's arm being ripped by the tangling on the truck and the agony he expressed. And there were 8 deleted scenes that appeared on the DVD's special features edition within its extended version. It's quite interesting. But I understood that there are some consequences that the Aesop of this whole movie, when it comes to street racing, you know that when it comes to a heist of pulling off the aspect of what thievery can do to you, you better learn how to stay away from the black market, and you shouldn't trust arms dealers to do your bidding. In case you stay away from the black market, you could be safe from them, and make sure you shouldn't trust strangers because you're too smart for them. But with that out of the way, I'd say I'd probably have to make a good choice to make of. I have to find something I could do. I know. I'll find the right number. Probably going to give this one 8.8 out of 10. There. And there you have it. I've decided to give The Fast and the Furious 2001 just a surprisingly improved 8.8 out of 10. And with that out of the way, you should hit the like button and subscribe. So this is me, Sir Carrie Mola, signing off. Bye-bye!